Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November edition of the Finance Business Partners Meet and Chat with the Professionals. This session is reaching you via a collaborative effort of the Finance Business Partners and Accounting Job Hub. Okay, so the Finance Business Partners is a community of accounting and finance professionals who are committed to changing the narrative of the profession. In our community, we are committed to the personal and professional development of our members. Okay, so in the spirit of the upcoming professional examinations, we would be looking at guides in passing corporate reporting and financial reporting in Ican and ECCA examinations. Okay, so our facilitator this evening is Mr. Bello Sobur Olamilekon. So he is a chartered accountant par excellence, and he has done statutory audits, including process review for top-rated financial institutions in Nigeria. And presently, he is an assistant manager at KPMG United Kingdom. And he also facilitates for Synergy Professionals, where he teaches FR and other ICANN accredited and ACCA Platinum tuition houses. Okay, so in the course of our session this evening, Mr. Bello will be taking us through guides that we can use, that is, people that are preparing for ICANN examinations and people who wish to gain insights in these areas. He'll be giving us guidelines on how we can attempt questions in these areas. So our facilitator over the years has been of relevance to many individuals who he has helped to pass their professional examinations, and he continued to be of relevance to people who wish to gain insights and knowledge in this field. So in the course of the session, if any question arise, you can note your questions, as there will be room for you to put your questions to our facilitator after his presentation. Okay, so Mr. Bello, you are welcome on board once again, and we are glad to have you for this edition of our monthly session this month. So you can comment your presentation now.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you. I think I'm so happy to be here. Um, First and foremost, I hope I'm not expecting accents, the British accent. So I'm still very much Nigerian. Um, well, that's on a very lighter note. Um, then my name is not Mr. Bello. My name is Sobu, or preferably you call me Lekon. So financial reporting and corporate reporting presentation, typically, particularly for guys that will be writing ICANN exams, then those that would be taking the SBR and then F7 papers in ACCA, maybe later in December. So, again, I think I would rather start by saying that none of these exams are a going concern. So none of these terms are a going concern. So ICANN, for example, is never a going concern. Neither is ACCA a going concern. So over time, from my experience teaching these courses or lecturing in ICANN and ACCA classes, what I have seen is that the disposition of candidates or students or people to exams is that we treat it as if it's a going concern. So you will hear words like, well, whichever time I pass is when I pass. They gave me ref this time around. It's as if I would do four papers. So let's say I pass one, then the remaining three I can be battling it later. I mean, when you begin to talk like that, you are talking as if the exam in itself is a going concern. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the institution in itself is not a going concern. ICANN would, of course, still remain to perpetuity by God's grace. So, but we're saying that we shouldn't take the exam specifically or peculiarly to me. I am writing my ICANN exams now. I shouldn't see it as if, well, whichever time I qualify is when I qualify there. So that's why I've said that please don't treat the exam as if it's a going concern. So what that does to you, if you have that perception that this is never a going concern, what it does to you is that it teaches you to be very aggressive. Imagine, for me, so let me just draw inferences from experiences that I've also had whilst I was preparing for this exam. Please tell me when I go too fast or you can't hear me, please. Hello?
we can hear you, sir. Go on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just to tell you, I mean, draw inferences from the experiences that I've had over time whilst writing my own exams too as well. Um, so I think I was very lucky to have cleared FR and CR, to have cleared ICANN in just one sitting, skill level, then finals, because I read accounting, right? And I feel what I would call the um, what I would call the success factor would be the fact that I was very, very aggressive. I was very aggressive to taking it and taking it once. I told myself that the 4 papers I'm writing at the skill level, I am clearing it once. So not to say that human beings are supposed to be different, are supposed to be the same, right? In your own, it might be that you have just capacity for two, but that two, you are reading with a lot of aggressiveness. You are telling yourself that this two, I am taking it and I'm clearing the two in one sitting. So that aggressiveness is very important. It is, however, possible to be very aggressive and still fail, right? Aggressiveness there means that, I mean, I've filled on my part. I've gone to lecture, I've gone for lectures, and I'm reading very aggressively. Reading very aggressively means even when it is not comfortable, I am still trying as much as possible to find time to quickly get on this book. I mean, a lot of us are possibly in Lagos, so we go to work. Maybe we come around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. In fact, 10 p.m. at times because of Lagos traffic. Aggressiveness there means that after still getting home at 10 p.m., I still want to take my shower, eat, then come back to my books, spend at least 2-3 hours. So that's my definition of aggressiveness. So when we say that we need to be very, very aggressive with ICANN and not take it as a going concern. So what it means is that we need to chalk out plans, tell ourselves that even when it is not comfortable for me, right, this exam, I want to take it in one sitting and move on. So what if I had taken it before now and I feel like I was very aggressive? There is really no um, I mean, it doesn't matter if, for example, I'm going on the journey and I slipped. I slipped my way to the journey. So if that journey is very important to me, right? What I do is to stand up, dust my jean. If my shoe is dirty, dust it, then continue the journey. So I mean, a lot of people will say, what did we gain? Last year, I nearly died. I was bleeding practically from my nose, and I still failed on my 5 papers. Maybe what that possibly means is that maybe I'm doing it the wrong way. And the funny part of it is that it is when you open this book again, you begin to see the different dimension to things, right? So my first advice or my first point again is the fact that we need to see ICANN as, we need to see this exam as an exam that is never a going concern for us. So let us set timelines. Some people will say, my brother, I wrote it for 15 years, so maybe I want to write it for 7 years at least, I'm still fine, right? When I qualified, on a very lighter note, right, we're having a induction and we sit by surnames. So a lot of people write on my surname that were sitting down together. Apparently, I mean, the least number of attempts from that row was someone that wrote it like, say, 4 times, wrote ICANN like 4 times. So we had elderly persons that would say that started in 1994 when he wrote it. The case syllabus, he went back again. He didn't write for 5 years. He came back again after 6 years. I had to keep short because I mean, I was very lucky to have had just one shot at both skill level and final levels. So again, we would have like a lot of some of these comments from people where they will say SFM, yeah, you cannot pass it once. It's not possible. Case study is never possible. You pass it once, right? So I mean, you hear a lot of stories, or maybe you too, you've had like a lot of experiences about it. Like somebody that has failed SFL like 4 times, or failed corporate reporting like 5 times. So how do you admonish the person? Admonishing the person means that of course the person should still see ICANN as not a going concern, as an entity that is never a going concern. I want to take this thing, I want to pass it once. So it is possible that what you've been doing over time are not the right things. Hopefully, some few tips I would be sharing here would make a lot of sense, and you're able to draw some relevant points from it that would help in the exams. So number two thing that I'll talk about, is I don't know whether a lot of us have read this book from Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey has, his popular Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. So he wrote a lot of habits of people that are very effective. What are the habits that you see them display? So, I don't want to go to all the seven, but one that I like to talk about most times, or that I like to practice most times, is that part, habit number two, I think, where he said, at every point you need to begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. That's the habit. So what's the habit saying? He's saying that start from the end. So, if I want to do any construction, so he's saying that make sure that you're considering the end in mind before you start. He gave a very peculiar uh, instance in that book, which I'll quickly paint so that I don't waste a lot of time. How many minutes do I even have, Sheros? Hello? How many minutes? Okay, 40 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So, begin with the end in mind I was talking about. So I now said that Stephen Covey gave like a particular instance that I want to quickly paint so that we can fall back to the key discussion we're having today. So he said that how do you want people, just see yourself now, like close your eyes, then just imagine that, we're dead and we're about to be buried and people are now assembled. So what exactly do you want people to start saying at that point that one is dead? What exactly do you want them to be saying? So as for me, right, I want people to say, that guy is a financial reporting guru. That guy is an audit guru. That is what I want people to say, right? When I'm dead though. So whilst doing my burial, I want people to say, he did this for me at this time. He did that for me at this time. So Covina said that. So please, those things that you want them to do, to say about you, then, which is your end. So you need to begin your activities with that end in mind. So he's saying that a lot of very effective people, what they do is that they start from the results. So they want, for example, they want to score 90 in corporate reporting. So what they do is that since I know that I want to score 90 in corporate reporting, I know of course it is not beans to score 90 in corporate reporting. I know that what it means is that I have covered 90% of the syllabus. At least I have like a 90% fair assessment of the whole syllabus. So it means that I am going to be reading very aggressively to achieve that 90% coverage. Begin with the end in mind. So whichever course of action that we find ourselves, right, when you use some of these concepts, like it teaches you to quickly achieve some of the goals. For somebody that wants to build career, for example, what exactly do you want people to start talking about you? When you are old or when you are of age, start those things now. So, so that I don't sound like a motivational speaker because I don't like to be tagged one. So let me come back to what exactly do we now need? What are the relevant topics in corporate reporting and financial reporting? So we have just few days to the exam. What should I be doing now? Right? So let me start with financial reporting. Then over time, I'll just add like financial reporting and corporate reporting like have similar scope. So I would only do ads on for corporate reporting. As you all know too, FR is just like a subset of CR. And this is applicable to ACCA too. F7 is a subset of SBR. So what are the relevant topics that I need to pay attention to? Like this is the 9 minutes. What should I be looking at now? Number one is group accounts. Group accounts, consolidated accounts. So the group account could be your consolidated P&L or your consolidated balance sheet, right? So you are either saying consolidated P&L or consolidated statement of financial position. Okay, so now in FR, the revision that the examiners did to the syllabus has now included consolidated cash flow in financial reporting. But there is that very little percentage that it would come out. Also, cash flow will come out in FR, right? So for guys that are doing CR, you know your own group account is level already, right? So your group account is the simple group account, the complex group account. So when I say complex group structure, we're talking about the sub-subsidiary, we're talking about the piecemeal acquisition, we're talking about the foreign subsidiary. So please make sure that you have at this point, you should be solving questions, relevant questions on a simple published account for if I'm doing CR, right? I should be solving questions on a sub-subsidiary, failed subsidiary, piecemeal acquisition, foreign subsidiary. All the group structure, at least let me solve questions on each of them. Then disposal of subsidiary too. So, you need to solve questions on each of the group structure. You know why group account is important for F and CR? In the syllabus, the examiner has said that 30% of the syllabus is made up of group accounts. So it means that by default, please take note of that too. By default, question number 1 is supposed to be group account for both CR and FR by default. However, this is Ican exams, right? So there could be twist. So I'm saying that this November diet you want to write, by default, the supposed question number 1 should be group account for FR and CR. However, this is Ican exams, right? And if the examiner takes a twist, where exactly is the examiner going? Some topic that the examiner would then be looking at would be 1, the simple published account. Simple published account. By simple published account, that's the account where they say, yeah, prepare your P&L of a single entity. Then prepare balance sheet or prepare your statement of changes in equity. So that could come out. So again, cash flow can be your question number 1. See what I have said. Number 1 by default is supposed to be group accounts. But if the examiner now takes a turn, does a twist for a particular syllabus, for a particular diet, then question number 1 could then either be, question number 1 could then either be simple published account, cash flow statement, or your ratio analysis. So those are the kind of questions that could come out of question number 1. Away from question number 1, right? So what other key topics am I supposed to pay attention to? I need to know all asset standards. All asset standards. What are the asset standards that we have in FR? We have IAS number 2. IAS number 2 speaks to inventory, right? IAS number 16 is on 36 is on impairment of assets. Is in for leases. IAS number 20 is accounting for government grants. Remember, government grants also has what? Asset related discussion, because there are grants related to assets too as well, right? So I identify all of these asset standards. For each of the diets, at least the examiner wants to test at least 2 of these standards. Diet in, diet out. Dieting, diet out. The examiner wants to see what is these people's knowledge of asset standards. So it means that if last diet it was 16 that they brought out, so there's high possibility that this could be 40, IS 40 now, investment property. Does that make sense? So we need to list out, okay, which ones are the asset standards. And what I'm saying now is highly verifiable. After this discussion, please, but and check what has the examiner been doing over time. You see that at least you would have 2 at least asset standards tested per diet for both CR and FR. So IFRS number 5 is also an asset standard. I hope we know. That's non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operation. So know your all asset standards. In fact, at this point, you should be solving questions on asset standards too. just pick them, maybe per diet, go back like 5 diets, say, okay, what are the asset questions that they brought out? So check them. Um, then, I mean, when I talk about asset, then of course the next thing is to talk about liability, right? So liability standard here would be IS7, right? Then most times the examiner would want to put IS10 in
Hello.
the category. Okay, is anybody
Hello.
talking? Hello? Okay. So IS number 37 is on your provision, contingent asset, contingent liabilities. So that's in a group of liability, right? And I said that the examiner, again, most times would want to align IS number 10 in the group of 37. IS number 10 is on what? Event after reporting period, right? So it's also very important that we're very much abreast of that particular. Somebody's hand is raised. Maybe it's something that we need to quickly address before we move on. Sure.
But why is that fine though?
Hello? Okay, so let me go. Okay. Um, okay, so the other part is the conceptual framework. Another topic very important that we need to take note is conceptual framework. So conceptual framework has also now been revised, particularly for those that are doing FR, please just take note. Conceptual framework has been revised. There is new definition for assets, liability, and other elements of financial statement, right? The revised definition, conceptual framework was effective, was introduced in May 2020, if I'm not making mistakes. So we need to take note of that. So your question number one, the examiner could say 1A, define assets, define income and expenses. What is your concept of what is the concept of what are the two assumptions used in preparing financial statements? What are the qualitative characteristics? So I mean all those basic conceptual related framework questions. Please just make sure that we look at some of those two as well whilst preparing. So there's another set of standards I call the Big Three standards. So big three standards. They are called big three standards because they are causing a lot of trouble, even in practice. They're causing a lot of trouble even in practice. So the standards are IFRS 15, 16, and 9. IFRS 15, 16, and 9. 15 is on revenue recognition. 16 is on leases, while 9 is on
Financial instruments.
instrument. So funnily, 9 has like sisters, siblings. So we have IS number 32, which speaks to presentation. Um, we have IFRS 7 that speaks to disclosure. Then IFRS 9. So it means that I mean IFRS 9 financial instrument in itself has like a company standard. You have IFRS 7 disclosure, IFRS IS 32, and IFRS 9. So corporate reporters will be the ones to bother themselves on IFRS 7, which is disclosure, and IFRS 9 and 32. So for FR guys, 32, IS 32, and IFRS 9 are the most important thing. And what's reading your financial instrument over time, what the examiner has tested is okay. So how do you do your how do you account for your complex instrument? The complex instrument, or otherwise called the compound instrument, where you have like a mix of liability and debt put together, right? So how do you do the accounting? How do you account for the normal bond, right? So what are the basic classification requirements? I mean, you know all these good stuff, so maybe better than I do. So know your big three standards because, in fact, particularly for CR people too as well. So at least two of these big three standards, the last 3 diets or 4 diets, the examiner has brought out. They've tested the recognition, leases, and financial instruments. So please pay attention to those 3 standards. They are causing a lot of trouble in practice. So that is why the examiner has been repeating some of those questions. Then the next one is ratio analysis and its interpretation. Please, if you don't know ratio, it pays not to even go for the exam, sincerely. If you don't know ratio, it pays to just enjoy yourself at home because ratio would come out like 90% of the time ratio will come out. In financial reporting, the only time ratio did not come out, right, was in was a particular debt I can't recall now. I'm really sorry because I left the job in May, so that was when I stopped lecturing Ican as well, at least for a while before I come back. Okay, so the last diet, the examiner did not do that, right? What the examiner brought out in lieu of ratio was IAS 33, which is what? Earnings per share. If you have read your ratio very well, you will know that one of the investment ratios is what? Earnings per share. Earnings per share is an investment ratio too as well. So it's well or as good as in that what the examiner did was indirectly bring ratio in the form of check my speakers. Is it for me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go on, please.
Okay, great. Okay, so it's very important to know ratio, right? And the funny part again is that it's not like so. The question is, three types of ratio can come out or have been coming out over time, whether you're writing ACC or ICAN. So it is either the examiner is looking at trend analysis, in which case the examiner is going back, comparing year on year, comparing 2017 to 2018, comparing 2019 to 2020. That's trend analysis. Or comparing 3 years, for example, that's trend analysis, right? Or the examiner comes and bring out cross-sectional analysis. Cross-sectional analysis means that they're comparing entity A with what? Entity B. So it means that on that your exam date, right, the ratio question that will come out is either trend analysis, right, where they will say we have compare 2 years or compare 3 years, financials of 3 years, or you do what is it called? Cross-sectional analysis, in which case you are comparing entity B with entity I, right? Or that the examiner brings out industry analysis. Industry analysis means that they will list industry averages like this. They will now give you a financial statement of your company. They will say you should benchmark the company with what? The industry averages. That is, in fact, me, I like industry average because just return those averages for them, those ratios listed. I mean, if, for example, in the industry average, they listed gross profit percentage, net profit percentage, return on capital employed, leverage ratio, and all of that. If they list everything as the industry ratios or averages, they now give you the financial statement of the company. They say, yeah, compare with industry. So you don't stress yourself. You're only computing all the industry averages for them. Does that make sense? Okay, so the other part of it is that people over time, because I've also marked like F7, I've marked financial reporting as well. And what I've seen people do is that people cram formulas and come and pull it down and move on. It is not enough to compute ratio and say, oh yeah, gross profit is 5%, everything is fine. No, that's not what we're saying. Particularly for corporate reporting guys, right? The emphasis is on corporate reporting people now. Even FR people too. It's not enough to say you said gross profit margin, you just move on, it's fine, it's favorable. No. We're saying that how well, again, do you analyze some of these financial statements? I'll give you an example, a very quick example. So if they say you should talk about profitability, right? The primary rate of profitability that you can comfortably talk about is return on capital employed. Return on capital employed. So let's say my question is now cross-sectional analysis. If it's cross-sectional analysis, remember, it's entity A and what? Entity B. So let's say they're giving me that cross-sectional analysis, financial statement. They now say, yeah, compute all relevant ratios. So the question can either say compute all relevant ratio or give you the specific ratios to compute. But most times it is what? Compute all relevant ratios. So if you now say, so yeah, compute all relevant ratios, I have picked return on capital employed as a relevant ratio. So let's say my relevant ratio now gives me one entity is 12% return on capital employed, the next entity is 10%. I've computed return on capital employed. One entity is 10%, the other entity is 12%. It is not enough to say, yes, of course, by interpretation, A is doing better than B. If A has 12% and B has 10%, I'll say A is better than B. But it's not enough to just stop there, right? Another thing the examiner is looking at is how well is this person able to support some of these numbers. And it's particularly important for guys writing CR, particularly those that also be taking their case study. So when you say return on capital employed is better, the next thing is two things account for the relationship, account for the behavior of return on capital employed. If my return on capital employed increases or decreases, right? Some factors, two relevant ratio can possibly explain what has happened to the return on capital employed. And the two ratios are one, asset turnover ratio, and operating profit margin. Asset turnover ratio and operating profit margin. It means that to explain my return on capital employed, right, I have to check what is happening to my asset turnover and what return on capital and operating profit margin. Asset turnover and operating profit margin. Asset turnover is giving us formula for return on capital employed for a lot of us is what? Is PBIT over capital employed, right? PBIT over capital employed. That's the formula for return on capital employed. For your asset turnover is what? Revenue over capital employed. Revenue over capital employed. And what asset turnover tells us is how well the business is able to drive sales for every 1 naira that has been given to them by the investor. Investor has given you 5 million. How well are you able to drive sales, right? So the other part is operating profit margin, and that one is giving us PBIT over revenue, PBIT over sales or revenue as it were. You will see that if you multiply PBIT over revenue, if you multiply it by revenue over capital employed, what you will get is return on capital employed. I need somebody to also calculate it in their book, as I'll be sure that, just like do your normal asset turnover is what? Revenue over capital employed times that revenue over capital employed times PBIT over revenue. Of course, what you would have is revenue cancels out revenue. So the formula then becomes PBIT over capital employed, which is what? Return on capital employed. It means that the level of association, how well these two ratios associate, tells us what exactly is happening to return on capital employed. I'm particularly explaining this part because because I wonder most of why people feel FR. If I know that ratio will come out, I know the ratio will come out. So why exactly would I still fail? So I need to be so we need to be very intentional in how we also analyze all of these things. It's possible that you don't know a lot of things in FR, and that's another tactical way of passing exams. You might not know everything, but just know that the one you know, make sure you kill yourself with it. Be sure that the examiner is convinced that what this person has put down is making a lot of sense. So, and the interpretation there is simple. Most times, your asset turnover, when your asset turnover is going, when your asset turnover is going up, your operating profit margin is coming down. I'll give you a very simple scenario now. If, for example, my asset turnover is going up, the interpretation is that I'm making sales. Like I'm making sales. So that would say, Ojanya. So it means that, my sales is very frequent. Like I'm able to make sales better than every other person. So if I'm making sales, it's possible that I am giving my people incentives, Incentives like what? Price reduction, right? If you reduce your price, what happens to your margin? Margin is what? Is my profit, right? The difference between your sales and your expenses. It means I'm giving some margin to my people, my customers. It could mean, right? And again, another thing we should also be saying, you are not saying particularly, you are doing analysis in the exam. You are not saying this is the reason. No, you are saying this is possibly why this is it, right? I'll say if my asset turnover is going up, I can say that, my ROCE, for example, has dropped or has increased because asset turnover has gone up, which could mean that incentives have been given to customers, for example. If you give incentive to your customer, what happens? Your asset turnover will go up because you make sales, more sales. what happens to your operating profit margin? Your operating profit margin will go down because you are not enjoying the margin. I hope that makes sense. So I would wait to get to the question part if anybody has questions on that part. So another very important topic we need to note is cash flow statement. It's very important for both FI and CR. CR guys much more important for you is the consolidated cash flow statement, right? I talked about simple published account. It's very important that we know simple published account. It is very important. Group accounts. I think I've talked about that, right? Then for those that are writing CR, miscellaneous accounts like miscellaneous standards like IS 19, 21, IFRS 13, IFRS 2, IFRS 8, that are not in FR, those standards, please take note of them and be sure that at least you know like 3 or 4 of them so that when the examiner comes, you hit them back. Another very important part, particularly in CR, is current trends in reporting. Current trends in reporting. So nowadays, people have started talking about a lot of current issues in financial reporting and corporate reporting. Issues like what? ESG, for example. ESG is what? Environmental, social, and governance reporting issues. So we need to, accountants, we need to know ESG is important. So they could ask you, the examiner has once asked in both ACT and CR, how do you account for cryptocurrencies? Cryptos are now like normal regular things that we now have. It has come to stay. So the question is, how do you do the accounting, right? So some of those things we need to read up about them. There are discussions around integrated reporting currently. What is the place of IT in financial reporting? All those are also very important, particularly for guys writing CR. If I'm the examiner at this diet, some of you will say, okay, be the examiner. If I'm the examiner at this diet, right? Question number 7 has to be on current trends in reporting, and that is sincere truth. If I'm the examiner at this diet, current number 7 question has to be on current trends in reporting. So just to give myself a very soft landing, please know every topic, all the topic, but I've read out very important ones. So so at this point, I do not expect anybody to still be doing hard reading at this point. So what exactly we should be doing at this point is to solve as much questions as possible. Some of the key concepts that we talked about, these topics we talked about, make sure you refresh. You are trying to renew your understanding. Some that you've forgotten. For group accounts, FR, solve like consolidated balance sheet, consolidated P&L. Be sure that you're very good at it. Imagine if you know that a lot of times when group account is not the question number 1, the examiner will just go and keep it for you as question number 2 or question number 3. So which is still 20 marks. So it means that there's no way you can even dodge it in the first place. Know all your asset standards questions, know your conceptual framework, know your big 3 standards, and the most importantly, wrap up with prayers. Because all of us know that the whatever endeavor that you want to take, whichever steps you want to take, the best way to approach it is to just gather everything. I hope we don't have atheists on the call. Gather everything and then just put it in the hands of God. So pray as if you have not even prepared at all, right? And they prepare so well as if prayer is not even part of your preparation. So I wish everyone writing the November diet success, utmost success in the exams. So I think I should give my mark at this point. Hello?
So thank you very much for the insights. We appreciate you. Okay, so if anyone has any question, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. Okay, sir. Okay, the question from my end is this. Okay, so let's say an individual has prepared so well for either the FR or the CR exams, and when he or she gets into the exam hall, maybe due to one circumstance or another, he or she cannot actually use what he or she has learned before to answer certain questions. What advice do you have in such instances?
Okay, so that's a peculiar place of villagers, sincerely. So, which is also know how to place. You could get to the exam and just feel entirely blank. What sincerely I would advise is that please don't give up. So don't give up means that make sure you stay right. I mean, you are there in the exam already. So the question is, what is the worst case scenario? I cannot leave this place that I am. I can never ever leave this place that I am. So the best I can do is to rethink, think through, look at the question and still fight it through. I'll give an example. I'll give an instance of this killer case that happened
Good
to me,
evening,
right?
everyone.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
So I just want to commend someone. Thanks for your efforts, sir. We really appreciate.
Okay,
Sir,
so
please have you done the analysis for the CR2, or is only just FR?
I've also talked about CR. I mean, was talking about the FR part.
Balogun, you look.
Hello? Okay, so the I've lost my thought process. So I was talking about the exam hall, right? So the best you can do is to keep striving hard. And I wanted to give an instance that my case study, right? So that was the very first time issue would not come out in case study when I was writing my exams. So that was the very first time ratio would never come out in case study. So usually, I mean, um, case studies usually they'll give you financial statement. I don't know now it's now pre-seen. So before then, I mean, you don't see anything. You get there and you have your question, you write. So what the examiner now brought out then was was capital reduction scheme instead of giving us ratio analysis, right? So normally they say analyze financial statements. So what they now said was draw a scheme of capital reduction. So the last time I heard, I mean, at that point, the last time I heard of capital reduction scheme was when I was in 300 level because even capital reduction scheme was not in the syllabus at all. But the examiner said, oh yeah, draw a scheme of capital reduction. So what I then did was to never ever give up. Why? Because there's a B part where I mean your case study is usually qualitative and quantitative analysis. So they say you should do quantitative analysis, which is analyze numbers. So that one was the capital reduction scheme. Qualitative one now I mean they could give you pestel, benchmarking, and all of that. So I think this particular diet was benchmarking that they gave us, right? So because I knew that one, like I had to make sure that that one yeah, I elaborated. I really made sure that I mean my book was full. So that's why I'm saying that I mean if you are just caught in the web, like everything just feels blank. Please don't still give up. Open, still think through, still be fighting hard. Because at that point you cannot return your booklet to say you don't want or you're not doing. I don't know whether that makes sense. So the best you can do is to keep fighting. So then I started doing this scheme of capital reduction because I had a fair idea of how it would look like, but I didn't know how I should approach the particular person I had in my case study. And I still managed to have like 53. That was my score. So it means again that I mean, if I had just seen that and I just got weighed down by the fact that I didn't know capital reduction scheme, I possibly would have failed, of course. Because if you don't have anything, of course, that's automatic zero. So please make sure you also, please also. That's my advice I would give in that regard. So that's
Any question? Any other question? Okay, you can speak this one. Chisom.
Yes,
Good
so
evening.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Billy.
Hello,
How are
can you
you?
hear me?
yeah.
Okay,
Hello,
you
can you hear
mentioned
me?
something about publish account. I don't know, is it applicable to see also?
Well, it's just for financial reporting. There are a lot of bigger problems in CR than to bring published accounts. So CR, unless the vendor wants to really test myriads of standards together and to see the application. So that's when you see it in CR, right? Over time, I mean, it's for financial reporting particularly. Does that make sense?
Yes, 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 it makes sense.
Okay, Mr. Toyosi, I think you are there to speak.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
That's good
Please,
evening,
I would
sir.
like to ask that. Some people that are writing, that are taking CR and let me say case study together, and you mentioned the fact that we have to hold on to ratio analysis very well. In
Mm.
that situation, how can you relate the two together so that it will not just be as if you'll be, though I believe it's the same ways, but just that the way you write report is different from the way when you are giving ratios on CR. Is this still the same method? Can we still approach it in the same ways?
Mm. I will not lie to you. So it's actually the same thing. So it depends on how you present your CR answers too, right? So my own style of doing analysis, ratio analysis is that I'll first solve all the ratios. I'll prepare like a table, first solve all the ratios. I'll say, I'll now create a paragraph called analysis. I'll now start picking each is one by one. So if you're preparing a report as well, right, you possibly would have done your table maybe in the appendix or something. And now start picking each of the analysis. You now say profitability, you want to talk about it. Liquidity, you want to talk about it. Kilongpe,
Solvency,
investment,
efficiency ratio.
you get, I mean, all the necessary ratios that affect different users of financial statement, I can then begin to pick them paragraph by paragraph. If I'm talking
Okay.
about profitability, I will analyze profitability, talk about Rose, then now talk about the other ratios that I talked about that are affecting Rose. Any other ratio that I've also computed, I will support my answers in profitability so that, I mean, anybody that sees that. Well, I mean, because you're writing case study, a lot of depth might come in case study. And this is where the depth comes in. Case, case study would include a lot of qualitative information that would mean when you are doing your quantitative analysis. I don't know whether that makes sense.
So can you take that one again?
Okay, I said that case study would include a lot of qualitative information that are speaking to the quantitative analysis we are doing. So imagine I'm doing my ratio analysis. You know, quantitative analysis is analyzing numbers. But case study would have given you a lot of relevant notes, information. They can say, for example, that the board of directors have decided to reduce price. So, I mean, if they have reduced price and you are doing your profitability analysis and you are saying the asset turnover is going up, I mean, you can bring in that fact to support that.
Hmm.
Okay, also in alignment with what the director said. So I'm saying that, I mean, it's fairly the same. Only that in your case study, you're also touching on a lot of other qualitative information that are relevant to the analysis you are doing. Remember, case study are reports. In your CR2, you are doing report. Only that the report is not a very complex one. It's a mini report. It's a small financial statement they've given you. So it's not like a much more complex, precise question in the case of a CR. So your question on how do you now try to synergize sincerely is very easy. So your precinct, you've seen it. Just ask yourself, what are the relevant ratios that I should pay attention to for this precinct? So once you know all the relevant ratios, then the next thing is go and know the formula, go and know the interpretation very well. I mean, you will see that some of them would even feature in your CI because a lot of times profitability at every point, everybody wants to talk about liquidity, everybody wants to talk about it. GRE, people want to talk about it. So, I mean, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, my brother.
All right, but
God bless.
yeah.
Blessing, do you want to speak?
Okay, you spoke about sectional analysis the other thing.
Yeah.
So my question is that can we actually relate that kind of analysis to benchmarking?
Can we relate that kind of analysis to what
Yeah,
benchmarking?
yeah, yes, sir.
So, I mean, all these analyses are even when you see it. So maybe I get where you're coming from, Shabo. I mean, all these analysis, whether you're doing trend analysis, you are doing conceptual analysis and benchmark, or benchmarking is in just analysis, right? So whether you're doing all of that, I mean, the idea is the same. So I'll give you an example. Conceptual says entity A and entity B, so I'm only comparing their results. If I'm doing benchmarking, I'm doing the particular entity they've given me and the benchmark entity or the benchmark numbers. I don't know that you get me. So it's at every point the same thing. We're comparing results. We're saying, okay, this and this, analyzing, basically. I don't know whether that answers the question.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question before any other question before we wrap up this section for today? With no question closed. Okay, we've come to the end of this small session. So, Mr. Bowen, we appreciate you for making out time for us to discuss this very important topic, and we do hope that the participants this evening had gained lots of insights that would help them in their professional examination. So thank you very much for your time, and to the participants, thank you for making out time to attend this session. We look forward to seeing you again in our subsequent sessions. And
Okay, thank you.